Out of the 80 books I read in 2023 across a number of different genres, these are the 5 that you have to pick up. The first book I have on my list is a nonfiction. It's called Conversations on Love by Natasha Lunn, and this story is actually written in conversation form, so you do get a lot of other experts who work in the field of love that chime into this book as well. And one of the reasons that I really enjoyed this one is because it felt so real. I think sometimes with nonfiction books, it can sound really fluffy, it can sound really like, nice in theory, but not in real life. Whereas this one, I felt like the tips and all the advice and everything they were saying applied to regular, everyday people, and you could use a lot of these tips in your real world. And that's why I tabbed so many of these places in the book, because I just felt like I could relate to it. And I think for me, that's the key with nonfiction. Can I relate to it? Can I really use it in my real life? And with this one, I felt like I could. It comments on love, not just like in romantic relationships, but also with your parents, your friends, your neighbors, your kids. It's love in all of its forms. And I really thought it had some really poignant tips and advice and just real people going through the same struggles that you and I might be going through. And I just found it to be a really remarkable read. I think every single person should read this book, because with love, it's such a big topic, it's such a heavy topic, and I think you can always continue to evolve and learn more about it, not just with like how you give love, but also the way that you receive love. I think sometimes that's the biggest misconception of people, is like, we're just not being loved the way that we would like to be loved. So often we show it in the ways that we think is best, but it might not be what the person wants to receive. And so I really found this book to be super profound, and I would highly recommend it. The next book I have on my list is a fantasy series, and I just included the first book for this video, but it's called The City of Ber by S.A. Chakrabarty. This is of course part of the Daevabad trilogy. It's a series of 3 books, and I gave every single one of them 5 stars because this fantasy is epic in every single way. If you are new to fantasy, have read fantasy for years, if you have not put your hands on this book, you need to do it immediately, because it was such a great read. When I say epic fantasy, I mean it gives you everything: world building, politics, romance, character development, just every single thing that you would want from a story and a plot that takes you to faraway lands, that gives you fun magic, that gives you so much development and character progression and intricate storylines. It just kept me on my toes the entire time I was reading it. I rarely read fantasy series one after the other, but with this one, I just could not put it down, and I read all 3 back to back because I needed to know what was happening next. The writing is incredible. I cannot believe this was actually one of her first novels. It just reads like a very mature author, clearly somebody who knows what they're doing. If you have not read this, you definitely need to get your hands on it. Even if you've never read fantasy before, this is a great way to get into it. This story is about a girl named Nahiri who lives in Cairo, and she is not very wealthy. She kind of is a street artist, and on the side she also has some healing abilities, so she does like minor healing work. One day she is hired to help with an exorcism, and that exorcism kind of goes wrong a little bit, and she accidentally ends up summoning like a Dijin warrior. And when he sees her doing what she's doing, he's like, I actually think you come from a long line of ancient people that are great healers in his world. So he's like, let me take you with me and show you these people. This might be where you belong, because she's always struggled with the concept of not knowing kind of where her place in the world is. So she's really fascinated by what he has to say, and so he sweeps her off her feet and off they go into a captivating world of all sorts of plot, and it unravels from there. And it's almost like the actual magic carpet that they go on. You feel like you were on that ride yourself through the course of this story into all 3 books. I loved every second of it. I think you would love it too if you are into something that is amazingly definitely well built and well written and well told, then you will enjoy this book. The next book I have on my list is a thriller. It's called Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell. This book has stayed with me ever since I read it. I don't usually read a lot of thrillers, but this one sent chills down my spine, and it was like just bone-crushingly devastating. I still think about it from time to time. But this story is about a mother named Laurel, and her daughter Ellie unfortunately goes missing one day, and the police and all the family, nobody has any idea of what happened to her. They don't know if someone took her or something happened and she was injured or what, but the police say that they think she was just being a teenager and being angsty and just ran away and didn't want to tell the family. Laurel, of course, doesn't buy that because she says it doesn't sound like her daughter to do something like that. So like any mother would, she continues to search and to hunt and figure out what happened to her daughter. 10 years passes and she still has no idea, but one day she meets a really charming man in a cafe and they hit it off really quickly. They start dating and he invites her over to dinner one day, and she ends up meeting some of his daughters, and the younger one, Poppy, looks just like her missing daughter Ellie. And Laurel is like, what in the world is going on? How can this little child look exactly like my little girl? And from there, of course, the story unravels and she's trying to piece together what happened and why this random man has a connection and why this little girl looks like her daughter. It just, like I said, was so bone chilling. It was so sad and devastating. This is like one of those scary things that you know happens in real life to people in your neighborhood or to people in your city, and it just leaves you just so devastated with what happens in the world sometimes. But the reason that I included it on the list is because if you like thrillers and if you really like suspense and really like that element of good writing and wanting to turn the page and wanting to know exactly what happens, then this book will give you exactly those feelings. I had to read it in one sitting. Even though it was kind of freaking me out, I just needed to know what happened. I needed to know what the story was all about, and that is what I consider really good writing and a really good thriller. It had tons of thrill. If you enjoy these kinds of books, then give it a shot. The next book I have on my list is a romance book. It's called Before We Were Strangers by Renee Carlino. Don't let the cover fool you. For so long, I put off reading this book because I just did not enjoy the cover, but that is a trick because this book was amazing. I gave it 5 stars. I enjoyed every second that I spent with it. This story is about Matt and Grace, and it's told in past, present perspective. It's also told from both of their POVs, which I love. And this story is about them meeting in their last year of college. They immediately hit it off. They become the best of friends. They have so many things in common. They just have the time of their lives that year. And that summer after is when everything kind of fell apart, but there's a lot of misunderstandings and they don't know exactly what happened. They end up not seeing each other for about 15 years. And one day on the subway, they make eye contact and Matt is like, oh my goodness, I need to get in touch with her and know what happened to us, because they were starting to get romantic feelings for each other towards the end of their time in college, and it's given him that feeling of like the girl that got away, and so he wants to know what happened. So they kind of start to ease their way back into getting in touch and seeing what happened all those years ago. I thought this story was told in such a beautiful way. Usually I don't like the kind of misunderstanding, miscommunication type tropes, but this one was told in a beautiful way, and it's told in a very real way. Some of these things do happen in real life, and it feels like a couple that you would know. I just thought it was such a beautiful tale, told so well, and at the end there's also like a big reveal that kind of like leaves you super shocked, which I don't usually get in romance books. That third act breakup is usually what they have in the last chapters, but with this one, it was actually a really cool, very neat, big reveal that I wasn't expecting. So it was really fun as a reader to go through that experience in reading a romance book. I highly recommend this book if you're looking for emotion, a lot of laughs, some lightheartedness, but also a really well-developed, well-layered story told from a dual point of view. And I thought it was so beautiful. Highly recommend. And then the 5th book on my list that you have to read is called The Right Move by Liz Tomford. This is the middle book in the Windy City series. I love the other 2 as well, gave those 5 stars, but this is the one that I had to include on the list because Ryan Shea as a book boyfriend is incredible, and I also loved Indy, the female lead in this book, so I had to choose this one out of the 3, but it definitely was very hard to pick. This book is so good. I cannot say enough good things about this one. Maybe that's why I left it for last, because I just want to go on and on about how much I love this book and how incredible the characters are and how well the story is told. This story is about Ryan, who is a famous basketball player. He has been through a lot in his life, and he is just trying to focus on his career, focus on basketball, and just live a very vanilla lifestyle so that nobody can criticize him or critique him or give him a hard time for not putting his all into the game. And then we have Indy, who is super bubbly and colorful and messy and just all of the things that are opposite to Ryan. She unfortunately ends a really long engagement with a guy that she was going to end up with and have a family with, and she needs somewhere to stay. So Ryan's sister, who is Indy's best friend, who is the female lead in the first book, she comes to the rescue and says to Ryan, can you please give Indy a place to stay for a couple of months until she gets back on her feet? You have the extra bedroom, can you please help her out? And Ryan, being the nice guy that he is, agrees to do that. And of course, as they spend time together and they see their worlds collide, they realize they have this amazing attraction and amazing connection. And that might sound like a typical romance, like any other plot line for a romance you might pick up off the shelves at your local bookstore. But this story, I tell you, is told in such a beautiful way. And the way that Liz Tomford writes like human emotions and human insecurities, I love that about her book. She writes very real characters that you can relate to. You can see yourself in a lot of them. And the only thing that I can't relate to is how amazing and considerate her male leads are. They just are some of the most incredible males that I have read about, and she writes them so heartwarmingly amazing and so affectionate and so protective and all the things that you would want from a man in your life. And I loved every part of reading this book. It was like a warm hug. I feel like I was giggly. I had butterflies in my stomach. It was all the feels all at once, and I never wanted it to end. This is also a longer book for a romance read, and at first I was really weary because I'm like, do you need that many pages for a romance? Like, they get together, they break up, they get back together. What's there to write about? But with Liz Tomford, you need every single page, you need every single word, because all of it matters and all of it creates a super dynamic story. I would recommend you read all three. This is my personal favorite. Ryan Shea is a home run boyfriend, and Indy is just the perfect female lead with balancing confidence, but also insecurities that she's working through, loving, caring, just amazing in every single way. And I love this book. I hope that's enough to sell you on it. Read all three of them, do yourself a favor, and start right now. And before I let you go, I do have one honorable mention book that I wanted to include in this video, and that is a middle grade read. I do read a lot of middle grades in between some of these more serious adult themed books, and I do think it's one of the greatest tragedies of our lives that we all grow up and forget that inner child in us. And I think middle grades books just kind of help me feel childlike again and joyous in ways that I think adults kind of forget sometimes. And it just gives me that little bit of whimsy and comfort, and it just brings me back to earth and it grounds me a little bit. And there's nothing like a middle grade book to warm your heart. So the one I wanted to include is called The Map Makers by Tamsin Merchant. This is the sequel to the book called The Hat Makers. I read that last year, loved it. And this one was just as good. I won't tell you what this one is about because it is a continuation from the first book, but this story is about Cordelia Hatmaker, and she lives in London a couple of centuries ago, and they live in a world that is run by magic by the maker families. We have the hat makers, the glove makers, the boot makers, all sorts of families that have magical abilities to create these items that their house is specialized in, and those items carry magic. So for instance, the hat maker family, they have these amazing hats that can either give you confidence or give you joy, or they can make you feel angry. So whatever powers they put into the hat when they're making them, that is how you feel when you put the hat on. And the story is kind of two parallel plot lines going on. So in the first plot line, you have the fact that her father is missing. He is on a ship with his crew. They go all over the world looking for really special ingredients to include to make their hats with. And one day when he's on a voyage, they encounter a storm and some enemies, and I think he goes missing. And everyone wants to think that he is gone and not here anymore, but Cordelia is like, I refuse to accept that he's long gone. I know he's out there. He wouldn't give up without a fight, so she's on a mission to find him. And at the the same time that this is going on, the peace hat also goes missing, and there's somebody in London, an evil villain who's trying to cause some trouble in London in their society and take over all of the magical families and their abilities. So she's also trying to solve that mystery. It is a fast-paced story with so much whimsy and so much magic and just a fun, captivating world that is super colorful. And if you're looking to either get into middle grade or you have a middle grader in your life, this is a great one to start with. It's just so sweet and wholesome, but also super adventurous. And this story is a continuation of where the first one left off. It does leave on kind of a cliffhanger and a clue for you to keep going in this one. And I believe the author just announced that she is also going to have a third book in this series. I think it's called The Troublemakers, and the cover of that looks so sweet. I cannot read that one when it comes out next year, but for now I will just have to do with these two. I might even reread them in the new year. They were just so sweet, and I would highly recommend them. So there you have it. Those are my top reads of 2023. It was a great year in reading. I hope you had some wonderful reads under your belt as well. Please comment down below if you have any that you would recommend that I pick up that I didn't have a chance to read this year. I always love getting recommendations. So if you have any, drop them below. And please remember that it doesn't matter how much you read and how many books you read. It just matters that you enjoy yourself. Sometimes in this community, in this online world, it can get super competitive and you can feel really pressured to read a million books in a year. But even if you read one book this year, that is okay too, as long as you're having a nice time. Thanks for watching today, and I will catch you in my next video.